and then like to have diary entries with so much, full life in them, and just the dynamics between Lily as a child, like, or as a teenager, are so full. Yeah, they're full. So being able to pull from those and to take that and then to work on that as an actor, like that would have already been my process as an actor anyways, is like journaling, or like, trying to maybe like write out my character's thoughts. And when you already have that in paper, that like creates a whole other just like mountain of juice for you to use as an actor. It's the best. It's so exciting. So yeah, I mean, it was like a double whammy, a Colleen Hoover book, working with you, or working,
And also,
Hi friends, it's Hayali from Screen Rant 02. Welcome back to my channel. Justin Baldoni got some bad news today in court, but also Blake Lively got some bad news outside of court, so it's kind of a double whammy. They all can't be winners. Every day of the week let's talk about it. Justin Baldoni Wayfair, including Steve Soros, Jamie Heath, Melissa Nathan and Jen Ale, were seeking an extension of time. They wanted 30 more days so they could finish Discovery, and they also were seeking an extension on their leave to amend their complaint. Back in February, they did a scheduling conference to set the deadlines for the various parts of this case to keep it on track to start in March. Brian Friedman, for his part, has stated he wants to get this trial as soon as possible. However, earlier this week he sought an extension of time from the judge and stated to the judge that Lively and Leslie Sloan and Reynolds were all disputing and not agreeing to an extension of time in an effort to be fair and to keep to his promise that he was going to keep this on track for a March 2026 deadline for the trial to start. Judge Lyman did not give them an extension of time if Wayfair wants to file a second amended complaint, and here's why he issued this order today and stated that Wayfair parties move for an extension of time for all parties to respond to the interrogatories served by their respected adversaries and move to amend their pleadings or to join other parties. The motion is denied for failure to show good cause. See Furry Puppet Studio vs. Fallout Boy. The Wayfair parties have now been aware of what opposing parties contend are flaws in their operative complaint for several weeks, and the deadline to move to amend is not until April 18, 2025. Interesting, maybe not in order for them to get any kind of extension in federal court based on their rules of civil procedure, they have to be able to show and establish good cause, and it's their responsibility to show it, and good. It says good cause requires that the delay stem from any mistake, excusable neglect, or any other factor which might understandably account for failure of counsel to undertake or comply with the scheduling order, and to satisfy the good cause standard the party must show that, despite its having exercised diligence, the applicable deadline could not have been reasonably met. So he's basically saying that them wanting to help reduce paperwork and hearings for the court by waiting until the judge rules on the motions to dismiss is not actually good cause, and it's not good cause to seek an extension of discovery just because they asked for a lot of discovery, because they already agreed to it, and they haven't proven to the court that there was some sort of mistake, neglect, or other factor that was making it so that they couldn't comply. His basically telling them you agreed to this even though they asked for a lot. You can comply. So here's the problem for Wayfair. He also says that they've known since February that there were vulnerabilities in their amended complaint, and its true judge Lemon made a ruling back in February, and he stated that based upon what the New York Times had filed in their motion to dismiss, that their motion was likely to succeed on the litigation privileges that are afforded to the press in the state of New York. It is extremely hard to sue the New York Times and be successful, and it is very rare that they are ever held liable, even though they get sued a lot. They were sued in 1964, and that's kind of what set up the stage for how they set actual malice for public figures for defamation, and since 1964 it's been really hard to sue them successfully, very hard. So high profile people that file lawsuits against the New York Times, like Donald Trump, Sarah Palin for instance, even though their cases they've believed were solid, they've had struggle to succeed, and people don't like to hear that it's difficult to win against the New York Times, but it's a fact. And so he told them back in February they have litigation privilege, they have the protection of the press in the state of New York, and unless you can prove that New York law doesn't apply to them, this case is basically vulnerable to being tossed because they've pled a good motion to dismiss. So it was at that point that they knew that there was flaws in their case, and then Leslie Sloan brought up further issues in her motion to dismiss, where she stated that a lot of the claims they had against her were pled on information and belief, which are vulnerable to dismissal. It's the same reason why Jed Wallace's case is likely to get tossed, that Lively filed, because he doesn't. They don't have a lot of evidence. She has no evidence against Jed Wallace, and they have this big conspiracy against Leslie Sloan, but how they tie her into everything is not the most strong case. In all of these cases, I'm just being honest. I know you don't like to hear that, so each one of dismiss, and each one of them, Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, Leslie Sloan, and the New York Times, have provided them a blueprint of what they believe are missing in their complaints, and all of them have said they don't deserve a second amended complaint. Judge Lemon has already signaled that he would be likely to approve leave to file an amended complaint, and so he signaled that back in February. So they've known since February that they could simply clean up their complaint and then go through the process and fix things now before they get through the motions to dismiss, and then they have to start over. So I always and truthfully was shocked they didn't just do a leave to file an amended complaint. So now the judge is telling them, I'm not going to go through the process of ruling on these motions to dismiss and then allow you more time after I rule on them to amend the complaint. Basically he's saying, I don't want to get through this process. Which, by the way, in federal court they have months to rule on these, right? Months there. He wants to do this fast, meaning he wants to answer these motions to dismiss quickly, but under federal guidelines he has months to rule. So now he's saying you need to decide by next week if you're going to amend, and quite honestly it's going to make the process faster if they just amend now. But Justin and Wayfair wanted to know what the judge thought about the current complaint and if it would get through the process, and the judge is telling them, I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to give you that courtesy you need to decide before I tell you what I think. And they agreed in February that they wanted to get this done quickly, so I'm Not surprised with his ruling. If anything, Judge Lemon is fair, he wouldn't allow Leslie Sloan to stay discovery, so he also shouldn't allow them to delay discovery. They all knew the deadlines. And as much as they know the deadlines, they also know the documents, and even if what they are requesting is a lot of documents, it's a part of litigation, and a lot of people ask me what I thought about how much she's asking for. It's a lot. It is a lot that she is asking for. But at the same time, if her motive here is to get them to settle, burdening them with a lot of discovery in order to give them what they need and make them have to work and spend a lot of money doing all these documents and answering all these questions, this is the kind of stuff that can fatigue a defendant in a case which ultimately could force a settlement. I've gone through it myself with discovery, and I'll tell you it's a pain in the ass, and there are times when the opposing party is making demands of you where you feel like, okay, can we just get this over and done with? Can you make this go away? I'm tired of dealing with it. And even though they say right now they don't want to settle, the longer this drags out, the harder it's going to be. And I'll tell you, like a March 26th deadline for a trial is fast. I am 3 years into my current case with no trial date set. I just filed a summary judgment in January, almost 3 years after the complaint was filed, so getting this into trial in March of 26 is fast. And so the judge is trying to stick to that timeline, which isn't a bad idea. I think the public would be exhausted if we had to deal with this for 3 years. So he denies Justin. I'm not going to say that that's terrible. In order for him to be able to get an approved amended complaint, he's going to have to request and seek it from the judge, because Blake, Ryan and Leslie are going to say it's being done in bad faith. They've been given enough chances. They already amended once. Let's move on. This is a retaliatory lawsuit. And given that the judge did tell them, listen, you've had weeks to decide if you're going to amend, and you haven't yet, he could be getting frustrated with Wayfair. And so in order for Justin and Wayfair to move forward, they are going to have to convince Judge Lyman that they have either new evidence or new parties that they are going to add to this case, and they are going to have to justify why they need to do this, and how it's not going to delay the case, why it's not bad faith, why it's not repeated failure to cure deficiency. Like, say the judge gave them an opportunity in February to leave to file and they didn't, and now it's April and they still haven't. It's a little bit iffy now, but at this point they are either going to have to stand down on the complaint that they have, or they are going to have to do a leave to amend to see what happened. And if they knew ahead of time that they might have amended, then we just went through all of these motions to dismiss for nothing. You know what I mean? So it could go either way. I'm not going to say I know. What I do know is that 12B motions to dismiss are hard to overcome at this stage in federal court, and judges are unlikely to grant these in full. And it sounds like even if they grant it in full, he's not going to give them additional time to leave to amend after a motion to dismiss. I personally believe that if they added new evidence and provided, like Blake's contract that showed exactly how she breached her contract, if they had actual evidence, say putting out the evidence of Bree Ryan Reynolds' statements to who when they were said, and they combined all the evidence into their complaint so it was streamlined and there wasn't an exhibit. A maybe that would work, or if they have found new parties that they can add, but right now they do have some obstacles. Because of the 47.1, because there's this litigation privilege with the New York Times, and the New York Times case is by far the most vulnerable, and I believe at this point at this stage the New York Times, if everything were to stay the same, I think the judge is going to dismiss the New York Times. That's my gut. I know you don't like it, but it's so hard to beat the New York Times in any stage, and they just rarely lose, so Justin has not the best day here. He's going to have to decide what he's going to do. Brian Friedman and his team are extremely skilled. This could have been a part of their strategy to see and get a temperature from the judge. They either have to be confident on what they have, or they need to decide if they have a compelling enough reason to amend the complaint. So next is there are new reports that Isabella Ferrer could potentially be trying to distance herself from this situation. Now this is from the Daily Mail, and I'll be clear that a couple days ago they said that Blake Lively regretted her decision and it was very stressful, and then today People magazine is putting out another article saying there are no regrets, and Blake knew this was going to happen, and she is fully confident, and she is doing this because she is standing up for her daughters, because if she knew that something happened to her and them, she wants to set an example for them. I'm of the belief that Blake is one of those people that doesn't care if the facts tell her otherwise. She believes she's been smeared even though there's no proof of it. Right, that's just my opinion. So the new article says that Isabella Ferrer is now distancing herself from Blake Lively, so take it for what it's worth. I'm sure there will be an article from People magazine in 5 hours saying that this one's a lie too. It says that there was eagle-eyed people on Instagram, Reddit. There's some Ellery Rich who's a creator on YouTube, and on TikTok she discovered this, but apparently she has deleted some posts she's made about Blake Lively, a lot like what Colleen Hoover did, and it says Isabella deleted her photos with Blake at the advice of those around her. A source told the Daily Mail exclusively Blake wants to drag her into this lawsuit and asked her to back her up on her accusations of sexual harassment, but Isabella could not do this because she didn't personally see this. The source continued, she was very naive when she was cast, and everything to her was a privilege. She was so focused on her character that she didn't have time to get involved in any gossip. If you notice, Isabella took very seriously the role of Lily. She read the book, she studied the book, she started to know who Lily was at the core in the book written by Colleen Hoover, something that Blake Lively is accused of not doing. So she knows that defending anyone against accusations, when she didn't see this herself with her own two eyes, could be very damaging to her career. She feels shafted, and deleting her photos with Blake was no accident. So it sounds like Isabella is sort of saying what the representatives for Taylor Swift's are saying, like she's feeling used by Blake, manipulated, brought into something that she didn't